Good morning, guys. It's tech time, and today's tech topic is the unseen review of the Pocophone X2. So, without any further ado, let's get started. Let's first talk about the Pocophone F1. Now, I just got news that there is a Poco F2 going to be announced this month, but we do not have enough info to do an unseen review. So, we will compare the X2 with the Poco F1. Now, the Pocophone F1 was released in August 29, 2018. It was one of the best phones for price to spec, and every YouTuber was talking about it. It was a phone made of plastic with a notch and a chin, but the internals were comparable to the flagship with a Snapdragon 845 with 6 GB of RAM and 4000 mAh battery. And all this for the price of $299. And comparing it to phones like the S9, which had 4 GB of RAM and 64 GB of storage and a 3000 mAh battery for the price of $720. So now, when they released the Poco X2, they did not do it with the same concept of the Poco F1. Unlike the Poco F1, which had flagship hardware, they changed it to mid-tier hardware. So in this video, we will talk about the specs, design, display, camera, battery, and price. Now, unlike the Poco F1, the specs had a bit of a downgrade. So starting with the processor, they have the Snapdragon 730G, which is the gaming series processor of Qualcomm's mid-tier chipset. It is an 8nm processor with 6 low-performance cores running at 1.8 GHz and 2 high-performance cores running at 2.2 GHz. The Geekbench single score and multi-core scores is 2557 and 6963 respectively, with an overall AnTuTu scores of 281,033. The baseline model has 6 GB of RAM and 64 GB of storage, with no official IP certification. But the website does say it has P2I splash proof coating, meaning it will be usable under rain or wet climate. But I wouldn't recommend it using immersed in water or taking it to the pool. Now, the previous Poco F1 was made out of plastic, but in the X2 they upgraded it. Now, the Poco X2 has a plastic glass back with metal sides. The front of the display is made of Gorilla Glass 5 and has a punch hole display. At the back of the phone, there is a circular design near the back camera, which looks familiar to the Huawei Mate 30. The design is not elevated and is just an effect cast by the glass. The volumes and power button are on the same side, with the power button also housing the fingerprint scanner. And we also have a headphone jack at the bottom, which is a perk in of itself. The charging port, which is the Type-C port, is also beside the headphone jack, so the Poco X2 comes in 3 colors. That is Atlantis Blue, Phoenix Red, and Matrix Purple. The Poco X2 comes with a 6.67-inch FHD Plus IPS LCD display with a dual punch-hole camera that has a resolution of 2400 x 1080 with a PPI of 395 and a peak brightness of 500 nits. It can also run at 120Hz, which is great considering the price. The display also supports HDR10. The display is an 8-bit, meaning it has over 16 million colors that can be displayed. Now, coming to the camera, so the Poco X2 has a total of 6 cameras with a quad camera setup at the back and a dual camera setup in the front. The rear-facing camera has 4 sensors. The first is the main 64-megapixel camera with an aperture of f1.8. Then there is the ultra-wide camera, which is an 8-megapixel f2.2 camera with a 120-degree field of view, which is great. We also have 2-megapixel macro camera to take close-up shot of subjects. Then in the last, we have a 2-megapixel depth camera for those good portrait shots. The camera can also record at 4K at 30 frames per second and can record slow-mo up to 960 frames per second, which is slow. Now, there is no telephoto camera in the Poco X2. And flipping to the front-facing camera, we have a 20-megapixel camera with f2.2 aperture and a 2-megapixel depth camera, which is used for portrait mode. Now, looking at all these cameras and their features, it is good for the price. The only thing I hate about the camera is that by default, the photo has a watermark, which is a bit irritating. Now, coming to how long this phone can handle itself, the phone has a 4500 mAh battery, which is large, but we also know that the display runs at 120Hz. So depending on your usage, the battery can be awesome or just good. Nonetheless, it is a great big battery, and you might not need to worry to use up all the battery by the afternoon or even till night. Now, in the box, we get a 27-watt charger, which is great. It can charge the battery from 0 to 40% in just 25 minutes. Sadly, even though the back is made of glass, there is no wireless charging in the Poco X2. Now, the Poco F1 was one of the greatest deals to have flagship hardware, with the baseline model being only $300 or 20,999 rupees. Now, why am I saying the Indian price? Well, this is because if you want to buy the F1 outside of India, it was a real hassle because the company is of Indian origin and the company has not spread around. You need to export the device from India. And even for the Poco X2, it has the same problem. If you want to buy the device outside India, it is going to be a bit hard. Now, the baseline Poco X2 with 6GB of RAM and 64GB of storage is 15,999 rupees or $225. But you will need to add shipping prices and all, so it could be more, and the high-end model of 8GB of RAM and 256GB of storage will cost you 19,999 rupees or $275 without shipping prices. But even for the price, having 120Hz and a good battery with great cameras, it is a phone you will need to keep in your radar when buying a smartphone after this pandemic is over. Okay, so I just found out after finishing the script that the Poco F2 Pro is going to be announced. So I will be sure to make a video on that, but I specifically made this video for the people who are going to buy phones after this pandemic is over, as there are many students who are finishing their exams and will be in the market for good, cheap phones. Next video will also be a good budget phone, so be sure to subscribe and hit the bell for that. And as always, goodbye.